Today we're going to discuss components installed in designated hazardous locations. While inspecting components installed in designated hazardous locations, you want to be mindful of the type of cargo that vessel is carrying. When on certain types of vessels, you want to make sure you have all of your required PPE, hard hat, life jacket if needed, your 4-gas meter, etc. So make sure before you leave the unit, you have all of your necessary PPE. Whenever you're entering a designated hazardous location, you want to make sure all of your electronics are intrinsically safe. If they're not, then turn them off. Whenever you're on a vessel that has a hazardous location, they will have a plan that outlines where those hazardous locations are, and they will also indicate which zone and where those zones are located depending on how hazardous that area is. Whenever you are in a hazardous location, you want to ensure that your equipment has the proper protective measures in place to prevent any possibility of there being an ignition source. In order to do that, we have a few protective methods that we ensure our equipment has when we are in a hazardous location. For example, explosion-proof, flame-proof, intrinsically safe, purged and pressurized, encapsulated, increased safety, oil immersion, power filling, and non-sparking. For example, here we are in a hazardous location, and this is the high and overfill alarm. To protect the electrical components and the wirings, we have an explosion-proof box covering the electrical equipment. When inspecting intrinsically safe electrical equipment in hazardous locations, you want to ensure that this equipment has been approved by the appropriate authority. Typically, this is done during new construction, but it could also be done during modifications. Whenever you are inspecting this equipment, you want to verify the operation and condition of that equipment. If you have any question as to the integrity or the approval of that piece of equipment, especially when it's in a hazardous location, then please reference the manufacturer's instructions. As an additional safety measure in this hazardous location, all of the electrical wiring is installed in this conduit in the sealed junction box. In certain hazardous locations, you will have ventilation. You want to ensure that these ventilation fans are of the non-sparking type. That approval will either be written on the fan, or you can ask the vessel representative for the approval letter. When inspecting explosion-proof or flame-proof lights in hazardous locations, you want to ensure that they are in proper working condition. For example, if you're looking at the light and you can see water or bugs inside of it, then there's probably a crack. Or if you visibly see a crack in the light, then that's not going to be good, because then there could be an explosion potential from a cracked explosion-proof light. During your vessel inspection, especially on deep draft vessels, you want to ensure that the minimum distance is maintained for openings, access points, and ventilation. So regardless of what regulation you have to use, whether you're enforcing the class, division, or zone, ensure that that minimum distance is maintained from openings, access points, and ventilation. The three main areas of concern when inspecting equipment in hazardous locations are ensuring that the equipment has the appropriate approval, the equipment is installed in accordance with the manufacturer's instructions, and the equipment is in good working condition. In summary, we inspected components installed in designated hazardous locations by identified any hazards, cautions, and/or PPE, verified hazardous areas with plan, verified equipment for hazardous locations, verified equipment integrity, inspected wiring and cabling installations, verified ventilation, fan non-sparking, inspected intrinsically safe electrical equipment in hazardous locations, inspected explosion, flame-proof, safe electrical equipment in hazardous locations, inspected openings, access, and ventilation conditions in hazardous locations, described any tips or unique considerations when completing inspect components installed in designated hazardous locations. If you have any questions regarding this lesson, then please reach out to your local verifying officer.